right, so I wanted to do a couple of quick examples looking at some questions related to the home ownership section and how to do some of these computations. So on the left-hand side of my document here, I have some vocabulary terminology that's related to this particular topic, and on the right-hand side, I have a couple of different examples. So the first one, we're going to go ahead and just look at that first example there, and it tells us the price of a home is $195,000. The bank requires a 10% down payment and 2 points at the time of closing. You can get financing for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage at 7.5%. So the first question here says, find the amount of the down payment. Well, it tells us right up here that the bank requires a 10% down payment. So we need to find 10% of the cost of the house. So to find 10% of the number, we need to change our 10% to its decimal equivalent and then multiply that by 195,000. When you do that, you end up getting $19,500. So that is the amount of money that you would have to have on hand in order to try to go and purchase this home. Now, question B then asks you to find the amount of the mortgage. So the mortgage is the amount you have to borrow from the bank. This is oftentimes where students make an error because they want to put this $195,000 as the amount borrowed, but that's not the case because you have to pay $19,500 of it up front. So that is an amount that you don't have to borrow. So to find your mortgage, you would take the $195,000 and subtract $19,500. We're going to subtract that down payment off because that's money we already gave them. So when you do that subtraction, you end up getting $175,500. There we go. So that's the amount of money that you would be borrowing from the bank. Okay, now C, it says find the cost of 2 points. So it tells us in here, that it's going to be 2 points at the time of closing. Well, points, we have a definition over here. It's a one-time fee that's charged, and it tells us that 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. Well, we have 2 points, so we need 2% of the loan amount, and the loan amount is the $175,500. So we need to change our 2% to a decimal, which would be 0.02. So when you take 0.02 times the 175,500, it is going to be $3,510. So in addition to this $19,500 you had to have for your down payment, you would have to have an additional $3,500 available to pay for part of those closing costs. Okay, and now question D here says find the monthly payment. We're going to exclude escrow and that type of stuff. Now this is where you're going to want to pull your formulas. So here we have, this is not the only formula sheet that there is, but this is some of the formulas from the section. That's what I'm trying to get at. And right here we have the loan payment formula. I'm going to take a quick picture of that so I can write on it. There we go. And we have all of these different variables in there. And notice that the definitions of each of the variables is right over here. So it tells us P is the principal amount borrowed. So I had to borrow $175,500. Okay, and then R, it says it's the interest rate. Well, on our document here, it told us the interest rate from the bank was 7.5%. Okay, again, we have to change that into the decimal, so it would be 0.075. And then N is the number of times compounded per year. Well, it's assumed we're going to make monthly payments, so that would be divided by 12. Okay, and now I can do the denominator of this. You have to be very careful when entering this into your calculator. Okay. This second R right there is the same as the first one. It's the 0.075, so that's 7.5%. The N is still 12. And then the other thing that students sometimes overlook is there is a negative sign on that N in the exponent. So the exponent up here is negative 12, and then T is our time in years, and if I remember correctly, it was a 30-year, yep, a 30-year loan. So we would have 30 in our exponent as well, and then close off that last bracket. Now, everybody's calculator is slightly different. Everybody's comfort level with their calculators is different. If you find that when you try to type this in all at once into your calculator, you're not getting the correct answer, the first thing I would suggest you do is multiply the values in the exponent together, so negative 12 times 30, and then replace that value with that product. So when you take negative 12 times 30, we get negative 360, and enter that instead. After that, it really depends on your calculator. One thing you do not want to do, you do not want to round any of these values mid-computation. So the way that I type it in is I do this all at once, so I would type it in as 175,500 times, and then I would put in my 0.075 divided by 12. You can push equal after you get the numerator done, but again, do not round the value. So after I push equal, I get 1096.875. Okay, I didn't round the value. Most of the time, you're not going to get quite this nice of a number. It depends on your starting values up top there. But what I can do, at least on my calculator, to ensure that I don't round it, is when I start doing my denominator, I'm not going to clear my calculator or anything. I am now just going to press the divide button, because a fraction bar is a division bar. And when I press the divide button on my calculator, on my screen, it says answer, and then it does divided. So what that is doing is my calculator is saying, take the last answer I got, which would have been the answer of my numerator, and then divide it. So that is one way that you can try to get around the issues that we run into when we round. Once I do that, then I make sure I do my first set of parentheses, and then type the number 1, and then I do minus, then do my second left parenthesis, and then do 1 plus 0.075 divided by 12, put my very first right parentheses to close that first gap, and then you have to do the exponent. So whatever button on your calculator takes you into the exponent, you would have to push that, and then make sure you put in negative 360. And again, depending on your calculator, you have to make sure your cursor now comes out of the exponent. So I have to push my over arrow. Yours might be different, but make sure your cursor is now not blinking up here anymore, but that it's back down to the main line of text, and then put in your last right parentheses. Okay? And when you do that, you should end up getting your payment amount to be $1,227.121463. So that would be your monthly payment, and then round it according to however the question asks you to round it. Okay, so when I jump back to my question here, it was asking us to find the monthly payment. So that's the value that we just computed on that other page. Oh boy, that was weird. Let's try that again. $1,227, and I'm going to round mine to 12 cents. And that is per month. Okay, now question E, it says find the total interest paid over the 30 years. Now to do this one, I'm going to take my monthly payment, 1227.12, and I'm going to times it by 12. And when I do that, what I have found is going to be the amount I pay per year. So that would mean I'm paying $14,725.44 per year. Now again, I'm going to do this for 30 years, so I now need to take that value, times it by 30, and this is going to give me the total amount I'm paying back to the bank over that course of the 30 years. So it's going to be 441763.20. So by the time those 30 years are up, you have paid the bank back $441,763.20. Now be careful here, because the question asks us just for the interest that is paid. Not all of that is interest, because remember, we borrowed $175,500, keep messing that up, from them. So that's not part of the interest, that's part of the principal. So I need to subtract that amount, $175,500, and when I do that, it will now give me the interest that I pay. So 266,263.20. So you've paid $266,263.20 of interest. Think of that as like rent. Okay, that is the amount the amount of rent you paid to the bank to use their $175,000 there. Okay, let's see. So question 2 now says, if the loan in the above problem is paid over 15 years instead of 30, and then it takes you through, find the monthly payment, find the total interest, and how much interest is saved. So go ahead and pause the video right now and try each of those on your own, and then I will show you what the answer should be. So pause the video. There we go. Okay, so here's what you should have gotten for question number 2. Your monthly payment, when you get all of your values in there, it's all the same as before, except for now our 30 is a 15, and that gives you a monthly payment of $1,626. If we look at what we got before, our monthly payment was $1,227. So we're looking at about $400 more per month. Okay, your total interest, again, I did the same calculation as above. I took my monthly payment times 12 to get how much I pay per year. But now this time I times it by 15 because I'm only doing it for a 15-year loan. That gives me a total amount I pay back of that $292,000, and then I subtract off the amount I borrowed, because this one is just asking again about the interest that was paid, and it shows me then that I paid $117,343.80 of interest. And then question C, how much interest do you save by reducing the mortgage from 30 to 15 years? So I take my interest that I paid above in the very first version of the question, that $266,000, subtract the interest in the second version, and I get a difference of $148,919.40. Okay, so that is the difference in the amount of interest that I saved if I went from a 30-year loan to a 15-year loan and changed nothing else about the parameters of the finance.